This is No Frills ASMR. I thought maybe today we could take a little look at the dictionary of cultural literacy, what every American needs to know. Second edition. This book, some of you have seen on my channel before. I just get a kick out of it. This is published in 1993. So, there are things that aren't in here yet, or whatever. But I thought it might be fun. We could look at some history today. Partially because I was trying to think of some ideas for future videos, and I was just kind of looking through it, and I was like, well, it's always fun to just look through this. So, I was thinking maybe we could do American history a little bit, since I know some of you say you're from other countries and find it interesting. So, one of the things I love about this book is how crinkled up the pages are. Because I used to, back before you had streaming or phones, I would get, this is crazy, in the bathtub with my, whatever beverage, and I'd sit and read this book, and I think that's how it got wet and crinkly. So American History 2, 1865, so it's the era between the first permanent English settlement in North America in the early 1600s and the signing of the Declaration of Independence in 1776 is called the colonial period. America's desire for independence from Great Britain led to the Revolutionary War, or the American Revolution. So, we'll just kind of flip through and pick out random things to read, I guess. Let's see, and it's alphabetical. Abolitionism, the belief that slavery should be abolished. In the early 19th century, increasing numbers of people in the northern United States held that the nation's slaves should be freed immediately without compensation to slave owners. John Brown, Frederick Douglass, William Lloyd Garrison, Sojourner Truth, and Harriet Tubman were well-known abolitionists. Abolitionist in the United States was an important factor leading to the Civil War. Abolitionism. I like this name, William Lloyd Garrison. I feel like Lloyd's a cool name. All right, what do we have? John Adams, and then John Quincy Adams. John Adams, a political leader of the late 18th and early 19th centuries. And if you're wondering, that is the 1780s and 90s until the early 1800s. And I have a video about centuries and why that is. One of the founding fathers, Adams was a signer of the Declaration of Independence. He was the second president from 1797 to 1801 after George Washington. Washington and Adams were the only presidents from the Federalist Party. Adams' presidency was marked by diplomatic challenges in which he avoided war with France. The Alien and Sedition Acts were passed while he was president. John Quincy Adams was the son of John Adams and was president of the United States from 1825 to 1829. The Alamo. And here's a picture of the Alamo. A fort, once a chapel in San Antonio, Texas, where a group of Americans made a heroic stand against a much larger Mexican force in 1836. During the war for Texan independence from Mexico, the Mexicans under General Santa Anna besieged the Alamo and eventually killed all the defenders, including Davy Crockett. Rallying under the cry, "Remember the Alamo," Texans later forced the Mexicans to recognize the independent Republic of Texas. Here's the Alien and Sedition Act I mentioned up here. A series of laws passed during the presidency of John Adams at the end of the 18th century that sought to restrict the public activities of political radicals who sympathized with the French Revolution and criticized Adams' Federalist policies. In response to the Alien and Sedition Acts, Thomas Jefferson and James Madison wrote the Virginia and Kentucky Resolutions, which asserted states' rights. There you go. The American Crisis. A series of pamphlets written by Thomas Paine during the Revolutionary War, in which Paine discussed issues of the Revolution. The first pamphlet begins with the memorable statement, "These are the times that try men's souls." Antebellum, a descriptive term for objects and institutions, especially houses, that originated 3 or 4 decades before the Civil War. Antebellum is Latin for before the war. Johnny Appleseed, an American folk hero who established an apple tree nursery in Pennsylvania in the early 19th century. For decades, he traveled through Pennsylvania, Ohio, Indiana, and Illinois, planting apple seeds and encouraging the settlers to start orchards. His real name was John Chapman. The Appomattox Courthouse, a courthouse in Virginia where General Robert E. Lee surrendered to General Ulysses S. Grant in April of 1865, effectively ending the Civil War. Benedict Arnold, an American general of the Revolutionary War. He performed notably in the early days of the war, but became bitter over several setbacks to his career. After receiving command of the American fort at West Point, New York, Arnold plotted to betray it to the British. The plan was revealed when the American forces captured Major John Andre of the British Army, who was carrying messages between Arnold and the British. Arnold escaped to England and continued a military career, but was widely scorned by the English. Calling someone a Benedict Arnold is a way of calling a person a traitor. Articles of the Confederation. An agreement among the 13 original states approved in 1781 that provided a loose federal government before the present Constitution went into effect in 1789. There was no chief executive or judiciary, and the legislature of the Confederation had no authority to collect taxes. I feel like I'm going to say this name wrong. Attucks Crispus. Crispus Attucks. Crispus Attucks. Why do I feel like I'm saying that wrong? Black sailor killed in the Boston Massacre. It is said that he was among the first Americans to die in the struggle for liberty. Benjamin Banneker. African-American scientist of the late 18th and early 19th centuries. Banneker taught himself calculus and trigonometry in order to make astronomical calculations for almanacs. He was hailed by abolitionists for proving that the powers of the mind are disconnect with the color of the skin. Can you imagine, like even now, people are like, oh, I can't learn math and science, is too hard. But back then, it was like, not only were you learning it kind of on your own, because I don't know how great the schools were, but also you had to learn, you had to make gains in it. I don't know. It's kind of amazing to me. I feel like people worked so much harder on their brains in a shorter amount of time because they died younger, and kind of got more done, even though we have all these computer systems to help us now. I don't know. You know, sorry for the side note, but I look at Reddit fairly often, and I've been seeing this thing that keeps coming up where people talk about, I can't even say it, it makes me sick, wanting to rot in their bed, meaning like just lay in bed all day. Why does that bother me so much? I'm like, what? Unless I am deathly ill, I would not stay in bed all day. I can't even imagine. Anyway, but that wording, I feel like that's not good for your mind to talk that way about yourself. I don't know. Do I sound like a boomer? Because I'm not. I'm too young. All right, Bill of Rights. The first 10 amendments to the Constitution of the United States. Among other provisions, they protect the freedom of speech, religion, assembly, and the press. Restrict governmental rights of search and seizure, and list several rights of persons accused of crimes. After the new Constitution was submitted to the states in 1787, several approved it only after being assured that it would have a Bill of Rights attached to it. Accordingly, these amendments were passed by the first Congress under the Constitution and were ratified by the states in 1791. Blue and gray, the Union and Confederate armies in the Civil War. The Union Army wore blue, and the Confederate Army wore gray. There was a mini-series called The Blue and the Gray back in the day. Daniel Boone, an American frontier settler of the late 18th and early 19th centuries, best known for his exploration and settlement of Kentucky. See, I kind of want to do a video on him, I think, maybe, because I don't know that much. And I want to do Lewis and Clark, but that's a big one, I think. I did Davy Crockett. Who else? There was someone else. Anyway, John Wilkes Booth, the assassin of Abraham Lincoln. Booth, an actor, was fanatically devoted to the Confederate cause in the Civil War. While Lincoln was attending a play, Booth stole into his theater box and shot him in the head at point-blank range. He then leapt down to the stage, breaking his leg, and escaped. Cornered later in a barn, he died of gunshot wounds, possibly inflicted by himself. Here's a picture of the Boston Massacre. A clash between British troops and townspeople in Boston in 1770, before the Revolutionary War. The British fired into a crowd that was threatening them, killing 5, including Crispus Attucks. The soldiers had been sent to help the government maintain order and were resented even before this incident. The killings increased the colonists' inclination toward revolution. Yeah. Boston Tea Party. An act of defiance toward the British government by American colonists. It took place in 1773 before the Revolutionary War. The government in London had given a British company the right to sell tea directly to the colonies, thereby undercutting American merchants. A group of colonists found a ship in the harbor of Boston that was loaded with the company's tea. They dressed as Native Americans, boarded the ship, and threw hundreds of chests of tea overboard. The British government then tried to punish the colonists by closing the port of Boston, but this move only intensified Americans' resistance to the rule of the king. Whoa. John Brown, an abolitionist of the 19th century who sought to free the slaves by military force. After leading several attacks in Kansas, he planned to start an uprising among the slaves. In 1859, he and a small band of followers took over a federal arsenal at Harper's Ferry in Virginia. A detachment of Marines reclaimed the arsenal and captured Brown, who was tried for treason, convicted, and hanged. Robert E. Lee, soon to be commanding general of the main Confederate Army, led the Marines who captured Brown. In death, Brown became a martyr for abolitionists. John Brown's Body, a popular song in the North during the Civil War, had this refrain: John's brown body lies a mouldering in the grave. His soul goes marching on. Oh, wait, is this? His soul goes marching on. Wait, that's not that song, is it? John Brown's body lies a mouldering in the grave. His soul goes marching on. No, that's the Battle Hymn of the Republic I'm thinking of. Did they put it to that music? I don't know. I'm not familiar. Okay, I'll have to look it up. See, this kind of thing that I get curious about and then make a video about. Because I'm like, wait, do I know? All right, Battle of Bull Run. The first battle of the American Civil War, fought in Virginia near Washington, D.C. The surprising victory of the Confederate Army humiliated the North and forced it to prepare for a long war. A year later, the Confederacy won another victory near the same place. The battle is called the Second Battle of Bull Run. The South referred to these encounters as the First and Second Battles of Manassas. So in here, we're kind of flipping between the Revolutionary War and the Civil War. This is the Battle of Bunker Hill. Now, when I was a kid, my dad was kind of into battles, and we road tripped around the United States a lot. And we would stop to read. They have these placard signs along roads and highways and in parks that explain the different battles. And so we'd always stop, and he would read it out loud to us. And of course, my sister and I were at that age where we're like, oh my God, it's so boring. But a lot of the battlefields are just, they're just fields of grass. At this point, you don't see anything. So it is a little hard as a kid to find that very interesting. All right, the Battle of Bunker Hill. The first great battle of the Revolutionary War. It was fought near Boston in June of 1775. The British drove the Americans from their fort at Breed's Hill to Bunker Hill, but only after the Americans had run out of gunpowder. Before retreating, the Americans killed many British troops. The Battle of Bunker Hill was encouragement to the colonies. It proved that American forces, with sufficient supplies, could inflict heavy losses on the British. An American officer, William Prescott, is said to have ordered during the battle, "Don't fire until you see the whites of their eyes." Whoa. Aaron Burr, a political leader who served as vice president of the United States in the first term of Thomas Jefferson, 1801 to 1805. After Burr killed Alexander Hamilton in the Burr-Hamilton duel, his career declined. He was later involved in a bizarre conspiracy to sever the western states and territories from the Union. Burr was tried for treason, but was acquitted. Here's the Burr-Hamilton duel that the musical Hamilton is based on. A duel fought in 1804 between Aaron Burr, Vice President of the United States, and Alexander Hamilton, former Secretary of the Treasury. The two had been bitter political opponents for years. Burr shot and killed Hamilton. I can remember back in the 90s reading that, and I hadn't heard about that in school. I was like, wait, what? But now everybody knows about it. Yeah, you think politics is bad now. Not out having duels. John C. Calhoun. That sounds Southern, doesn't it? Calhoun. The leading Southern politician of the early 19th century, he served as vice president under both John Quincy Adams and Andrew Jackson, and then was elected senator from South Carolina. Calhoun championed slavery and states' rights. During the early 1830s, he led the nullification movement, which maintained that when a state found a federal law unacceptable, the state had the right to declare the law null or inoperative within its borders. Nullification was aimed particularly at the high protective tariff of 1828. Calhoun opposed protective tariffs. A man of powerful intellect, Calhoun increasingly became obsessed with the South's minority status and with finding ways to protect slavery. Although he died in 1850, his influence helped put the South on the way that led ultimately to secession and the Civil War. Kit Carson, a skilled frontier trapper and guide of the 19th century who helped open the territory of California to settlement from the United States. A general of the Union side in the Civil War, he moved a great number of Navajos by force in the 1860s. Many died during the journey. Don't like that. Battle of Chancellorsville. So it's interesting, this Kit Carson. So he fought on the Union side during the Civil War, ending slavery, but then moved a great number of Navajos. People are complicated, man. Battle of Chancellorsville, an important battle of the Civil War, fought in Virginia in 1863. The South, led by Robert E. Lee and Stonewall Jackson, defeated a larger Northern army, but Jackson was accidentally shot and killed by his own men after the battle. That's an interesting one. Where's Stonewall Jackson? Hold on. I got to read this to you guys. Stonewall. I just get confused who that was. Where's Jackson? All right, hold on. Where is that? I think I'm out of. Hold on, wait a minute. ABC. I think I've gone too far. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, G, H, I, J, 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 Jackson. Where is he? Hold on. Jesse Jackson, no. Where's Stonewall? Hold on. This is going to bug me now. Hold on. I got to find it. C, D, E, F, G. H, I. Jackson. Jack. Andrew. Stonewall Jackson, 256. Hold on. Okay. No, that's not it. Dang it. I can't find where they talk about it, but if my memory serves, he finished the battle, Stonewall Jackson, and there was like a river dividing where the Union and Confederate, and they won the battle. And then he went back to meet up with his own troops, and they mistook him for the enemy, and not knowing they'd already won the battle, they shot and killed him. But I feel like there was a good telling of it in here. Maybe I read the poem about it. I don't know. Anyway, it says, in the poem, Barbara Fritchie by John Greenleaf Whittier, Stonewall Jackson orders his men not to harm Barbara Fritchie or the Union flags she is holding. It says, Jackson's dying words, "Let us cross the river and rest in the shade," are much remembered. Oh, I bet it's that quote. Hold on. Sorry. I don't know why this is suddenly very important to me, but it is. cross the river and rest in the shade. It's the same. I just feel like there's a better telling of it in here, but maybe not. Yeah, so they'd finished the battle, and he said, "Let us cross the river and rest in the shade." And then he went to cross the river, and they shot and killed him. Anyway, crazy story. Jamestown, the first permanent English settlement in North America. Founded in 1607 in Virginia, Jamestown was named for King James I of England. It was destroyed later in the 17th century in an uprising of Virginians against the governor. John Paul Jones, a naval leader of the Revolutionary War, known for his attacks on British ships off the coast of England. When a British commander asked him to surrender his badly crippled ship during a battle, he allegedly replied, "I have not yet begun to fight," and compelled the British ship to surrender. 2 days later, his own ship sank. Know-Nothings, a party opposed to the holding of public office by immigrants of Roman Catholics. The Know-Nothings, also known as nativists, insisted that only true Native Americans should serve in the government. The party was quite successful in the 1850s, but split over the slavery question. Its official name was the American Party. It picked up the Know-Nothing tag because its members, maintaining secrecy about the party's activities, customarily answered questions with, "I know nothing." Today, the term "know nothing" is usually applied to bigots. Wow. Okay. This is the 1990s. But I don't hate that. You're a know-nothing. All right. Lewis and Clark Expedition, a journey made by Meriwether Lewis and William Clark during the presidency of Thomas Jefferson to explore the American Northwest, newly purchased from France, and some territories beyond. The expedition started from St. Louis, Missouri, and moved up the Missouri River and down the Columbia River to the Pacific Ocean. The information that Lewis and Clark gathered was of great help in the settlement of the West. It started in St. Louis, my sites, and then went the Missouri River to the Columbia River. I think they don't have these rivers mapped out very well on this map because it's hard to see how you're going to get very far in Missouri on this map. Where's the Columbia River? We'll see. We'll have to research all this if I do a video. That video is going to take me more work because I'll need a better map with the rivers mapped out better for us to do that. But I think that could be interesting. There's Abe. Abraham Lincoln. The Lincoln-Douglas debates, a series of debates between Abraham Lincoln and Stephen A. Douglas in 1858 when both were campaigning for election to the United States Senate from Illinois. Much of the debating concerned slavery and the extension of the institution of slavery into territories such as Kansas. The debates transformed Lincoln into a national figure and led to his election to presidency in 1860. Lincoln's second inaugural address, a speech given by Abraham Lincoln at his inauguration for a second term as president, a few weeks before the Union victory in the Civil War. It concludes with this appeal for reconciliation. Can you imagine? After an actual civil war, like we're divided right now as a country, but if you were actually killing each other and had cousins killing each other and brothers killing each other. Like families were torn apart. It's hard to imagine that the country recuperated from that, you know? And it sort of didn't. I mean, there's still definite splits with that. With malice toward none, with charity for all, with firmness in the right, as God gives us to see the right, let us strive on to finish the work we are in, to bind up the nation's wounds, to care for him who shall have borne the battle, and for his widow and his orphan, to do all which may achieve and cherish a just and lasting peace among ourselves and with all nations. It's a tough times. Let's see. Maybury versus Madison. This has been coming up lately. Let's see what they say here. A case decided by the Supreme Court under Chief Justice John Marshall in 1803. The court declared unanimously that a certain law passed by Congress should not be enforced because the law was opposed to the Constitution. Marbury versus Madison established the principle of judicial review, that the Supreme Court has the power to declare acts of Congress unconstitutional. This has been coming up lately. It's hard to not get political when you're talking about actual politics, so like whatever. But because J.D. Vance has been saying that the courts shouldn't have any say, but that's what Maybury versus Madison's about. So if you're curious, you can look that up and learn about it. John Marshall, Mason-Dixon line. I don't know. What is this picture of the Mayflower? The ship that carried the Pilgrims to America. It made a permanent landing near Plymouth Rock in 1620 after the Pilgrims had agreed to the Mayflower Compact. The Mayflower Compact, an agreement reached by the Pilgrims on the ship the Mayflower in 1620, just before they landed near Plymouth Rock. The Mayflower Compact bound them to live in a civil society according to their own laws. It remained the fundamental law of their colony of Plymouth until the colony was absorbed into Massachusetts in the late 17th century. The Mayflower Compact was the first written constitution in North America. Interesting. Minutemen, armed American civilians who were active in the Revolutionary War and in the period just preceding the war. They were named Minutemen because they were ready to fight alongside regular soldiers at a moment's notice. The Minutemen of Massachusetts were especially well known. During the Cold War, the name Minutemen was given to a United States missile held ready for launching in the event of nuclear attack. What is this? The Northwest Passage. A sea route from the Atlantic Ocean to the Pacific Ocean through northwestern America, often sought by early explorers. There is an actual Northwest Passage, but it requires sailing through far northern waters that are icebound much of the year. My map doesn't go that far north, or we'd look. 1 if by land, 2 if by sea. The words used by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow in his poem Paul Revere's Ride to describe the signal used to guide the midnight ride of Paul Revere. At the start of the Revolutionary War, Revere had ordered 2 lanterns be placed in a Boston church tower to warn his Confederates that British were on the move. Longfellow embellished the story a little. Thomas Paine, a patriot and author in the Revolutionary War, whose pamphlets such as Common Sense and the American Crisis series urged American independence. He took part in the French Revolution and wrote The Rights of Man to defend it against the criticisms of Edmund Burke. Paine also wrote The Age of Reason, upholding deism. preamble to the Constitution, a statement attached to the beginning of the Constitution by the Constitutional Convention declaring the purpose of the document. It reads, "We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, do ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America." Well, there we go. All right, there's a lot still to look at. Maybe I'll mark this page somehow. I had little pieces of